All right, so just so you know, this is a session today about using Pear Deck in the secondary ELA classroom. It can be middle school, it can be high school. I do have the bit.ly here, but you have it available for you in the chat also. Just as a quick rundown of who I am, my name is Verity Olive. I am a in August will be 21-year teacher. And I live in the city of technically Northridge / Van Nuys in Los Angeles, but I teach in the city of Oxnard. So I have two different communities that I'm close to. I teach language and literature. It is a class in part of the International Baccalaureate program. Our school is one of 3 in the state of California that has the MYP program, which is for 9th and 10th graders, the DP program, which is for those that are immediately going to university for 11th and 12th, and also the CP program, which is the career program, which is for students that plan on going into a specific trade. So it's nice. We have all 3 on our campus. We just got approved for MYP this spring, so it's been a big adjustment. What that means, though, is we're a community school. We're a public school. So we get students and demand a lot from them. And there's students that are just coming to us from the local feeder middle schools. So it is quite an adjustment for everyone. They come to our campus, they know there's going to be definite standards they have to meet, but we are 70% free and reduced lunch. We are 95% second language students. So we have an interesting body of students coming to us. And so that is what my classroom looks like. So I teach students that are going to go to university, but I also teach students that we're just hoping will stay out of the prison to the school to prison pipeline. So I have quite a vast difference sitting in my classroom. And then this fall will be also being one of the learning and instructional technology coaches. I will still be teaching 2 classes a semester, but then the rest of my time I will be helping teachers how to improve in reaching these students, and then also how to improve in using technology. We all got a horrendous crash course, obviously, over the last 1.5 years, but we still need to know now that we're getting students back in the classroom, how can we use the same technology in the most beneficial way? I do have my Twitter here. I have my email here. They are linked, so you're able to do that. As you can see, I am a Google certified trainer. I also am a Pear Deck coach for California, and I'm an ambassador for the SDGs, which is the global goals that is sponsored by the UN. And it's a world program. A lot of times you'll see it on different Twitter feeds about the global goals. And so I am one of the ambassadors for that. So that's just a little bit of who I am. As I mentioned, we have the poll. If you haven't already done it, you can click for the poll here. I'm just going to quickly grab the link for it. So it looks like out of ours, how comfortable are you? You have 3 choices. I have never used it. I use it but need a refresher. It is my go-to ed tech choice. So if you don't mind filling that out, I would appreciate it greatly. And if you need, I have the QR code here also, if that's faster, if you have your phone. All right, so it looks like we have a lot that have never used Pear Deck before. So that will be helpful knowledge. This is your ed tech choice. So later on in the presentation, hopefully it'll be far more interesting for you. And then for those that need a refresh, I am here for that. That is not a problem. All right, so let us get started. Just overall, what is Pear Deck? So I'm going to do a real quick look at how to use Pear Deck, what Pear Deck is. Just know that there's 2 options, as most things in educational technology. There is the option of the free and the option of the paid. Our district has done the paid portion of it. So I'm going to show you a lot of things that you can do. And then there is also the free portion. The free works fine. I used it for years. It's just our district decided to purchase it. So that is how we have the two. So just looking at how to use Pear Deck, here's a brief overview. What is it? It is a platform that allows you to basically take your Google Slides. You can also use PowerPoints. I just happen to use slides always, since we're a Google district. You can take your slides and then you just lay it on top of it. It basically turns it into an interactive way for students to respond. I personally was using Pear Deck before the pandemic. I would use it in my class daily before the pandemic. I had a cart of computers. Students would do this because I have students that English is not their first, it's not even their second or third language. And so they struggle, especially when I'm teaching the more higher level courses, they struggle to feel that they can respond as their peers are. And so using Pear Deck really opened that up. That's why I mentioned in this, it's for those reluctant students. And so it is a nice feature. How do you get it? For those of you that have never used it, these are the steps. First, open a Google slide, or you can open a slide deck from your drive. Then you're going to go to add-ons. You're going to click get add-ons, and then you're going to install Pear Deck. All right, so that is the steps to this. I'm going to actually show you how to do this without presenting. So as I said, you have your Pear Deck, you have your slide deck open. You're going to go to add-ons. You're going to go to get add-ons. Once you go to get add-ons, you're going to see Pear Deck, hopefully right at the top, it usually is. And then you're going to click on it and you will install it. It'll ask you, do you want it to get into your drive, all that? Just say yes, especially if you're doing it in your school account. They'll take over the world, we know. Once you've done that, you can go to, like I said, you have it installed. We're gonna then go to the next slide. Once you do that, to open Pear Deck, you're gonna go to add-ons again, and then Pear Deck for Google Slides, and then open the Pear Deck add-on. You also sometimes will end up with this. I use it so often that my Google Slides has this here. Some people get it, some people don't. I don't know the rhyme or reason. I've asked Pear Deck. They don't know the rhyme or reason necessarily. And so you sometimes will get this where it just becomes another tab on your Google Slides, which is fantastic. It does have a tendency of coming and going, so I want you to know how to get it. Otherwise, it's slide deck for Google Slides, add-on, open Pear Deck. Once you do that, you'll notice on the far right, you will get a Pear Deck toolbar opening. This is like your command center for Pear Deck. So as you can see at the top, you're going to get start lesson. That is once you've designed your Pear Deck. You have our template library. We're going to spend some time in that today. You also have ask students a question. These are the question types possible. If you have the free version, you will get the text, you will get multiple choice, you will get the numbers, and I think you get the draw slide. If you have the paid version, you get all of this. And these are where you have a slide, such as a slide like this, and you decide, okay, I want students to be able to write a response. I want to see what students think about this or what questions they have. All you have to do is click ABC. It does its happy little magic. And then you'll notice you get this bar here. That tells you when students look at the Pear Deck, they now will have a box that they can respond to. As a teacher, you can see that response. If you're like suddenly like, ooh, I didn't want to put that there, you can always just click a different question type. It'll pop up. It'll override it instantly. If you decide, ooh, I don't even want this to be a slide, like this is the title slide, I don't need a response to this. All you have to do is touch it. The gray part, the box shows up, and you can quickly get rid of it. And then it makes it no longer a slide that has a question It does still stay in the speaker notes, but you can ignore that or erase it. It works either way. But if it doesn't have the bar right away, that tells you that it is not something students can respond to. You'll notice, and this is part of that, if you have the paid version, you also can add audio to your slides. So you can actually read directions. So if you have students, I have students that maybe their comprehension is not what it should be, or they really need student teacher voice to help them or explain things, you can also add audio. It is very simple. You can upload audio files, but you can also just click on it. You are able to record directly here. And then you can add audio to the slide. They keep changing the length. It started at 90 seconds. It now is longer, but it changes. So that is basically, and then if you go to the very bottom, how Pear Deck works, they will explain it if you feel I did not explain it enough for you. But those are the general parts. Getting back to, all right, so now we have Pear Deck set up. It's there. I want to use this product. How? All right, so how do I use this platform? You'll notice under our template library, there's 3 sections. There's lesson builders, which means it's a slide already created. I just drop it in, and they have beginning of the lesson, middle of the lesson, review at the end of the lesson. There's learning development. This is what they're expanding the most on. There's critical thinking, and then there's SEL. And so that way you instantly have slides already made for you. You're able to drop right into your presentation. And then there's subject area templates. These templates are broken down by subject. There's a whole one on ELA, world language, math, sciences, little kids. There's all sorts of things. You can use them, you can share them. I'm going to show you how you can modify them today. So these are the templates that are already here. And then you also have amazing individuals like Amanda Sandoval. You have Brianna Davis. They're both social science teachers, but they create beautiful things. You can see what they've done, give you some inspiration, which is what I often do. And then you can do them for the ELA classroom, which really helps. All right, so we're going to get into the templates today. So looking at lesson builders, we're going to see these are the top 2 that I use. So the first one I love is this one here. Drag your dot to see how you are feeling. I would do this in the middle of the lesson, just basically a temperature check. So in our class, sometimes we're discussing very intense literature. I would just throw this up on the board, have students respond and say, all right, where are we? Do we need to break this down? Do we need further discussion? Are we good? And then right away, students will have their arrow. It's a draggable. They have the little dots down here and they're able to place it where they are. And so right away, as the instructor, I can see like, all right, we need to take a break. We need to stop back. We need to go forward. If you ever don't like the language, the great thing about Pear Deck is the slide is made for you. All you have to do is click on it and it's a text box. So you can change the language for anything. You can also change the picture if you feel that it's not appropriate. Sometimes I do that because sometimes the pictures are middle schoolish or younger, or they're not as diverse as I want. So then I will add in outside pictures and you can just place them in the same place. So it's very simple. Like I said, it is basically, they're Google Slides that have been created for you. So you can just change them out if you want. You can adjust them, you can alter them. That is all available to you. The second one I really like to use, and I use this often, is especially in literature, you read something, it's interesting, but it comes and goes out of students. So I really like this critical thinking slide, which is connected to your life. What's something interesting you learned today? This also helps me instantly see if they paid attention to anything we've discussed in class. But the better question is, can you relate this to something in your own life? And this really helps to be culturally responsive because, like I said, I live in LA, I work in Oxnard. I don't always know the very small things happening in the community. I know the large things because I've been there 20 years. But the small things on a block, I may not necessarily know. So this helps me when students instantly bring in, like, oh, we had police activity on our block last night. Okay, so how does this relate when we're talking about the Papito story And we see police activity in the apartment building. So it's suddenly students are able to see this connection. How did you feel? Were you the nosy neighbor, or were you the neighbor that kind of just, that's their problem, let me not let it get in my life? So there's different avenues that I'm able to use. So I really like this slide here. So these are the ones I use for lesson builders. There are a ton, so I'm going to show that to you now. What you do is you go to our template library. It comes up on the side. There's the lesson builders. You have beginning of lesson, so kind of your bell ringers. You'll notice there's instruction slides. What did you learn from the homework? Draw 2 things you already know about today's topic. Think of a question your classmates might have. What do you wonder? And then there is a, how was the homework assignment? But remember, if you don't like the wording, you can change all of it. It is very flexible. So those are the lesson builders. For the learning development, these ones here, like I said, you have critical thinking slides, and you also have SEL slides. So you'll notice, again, you're able to just click on them. These are the ones I use in my class. I've just shown the ones that really help for the English ELA classroom. I like this one, reflect on today's activities. What did you like? What didn't you like? I have a very independent learning guided classroom. And so we'll do activities, and some students are like, oh, that was painful. And then other students are like, no, I really like this portion of it. So then, as we all know, we teach more than one class. By first period, I definitely know what I need to change for second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, right? I have this sense, I instantly get feedback. What was easy? What was hard, right? Sometimes the way I explain something, the instructions I've given, the examples I've provided were not as effective as I thought they were. Or they're not as effective. I know it's going to be a drastic change. These students who I'm going to be getting in August are going to be drastically different than students I've gotten previously. They've had life experience that no one else has had. So how am I going to respond to that? So what did I like? What didn't I like? These are great questions to make sure I'm constantly reflecting on for my students' benefit. This is another slide I use often. I have a very diverse community. As I said, 95% of our students, English is not their only language. 5% are a very small group from a community nearby us that are extremely wealthy, have a very different life than the rest of our students. So some of them come in with very set viewpoints. This is how the world is, because that's how they've only ever seen it in their very closed enclave of a community. This slide helps a lot. So I love this slide because it's considered different viewpoints. Draw or type your thoughts on this topic in one head. And then what do you think someone else will think of this topic? And it's interesting because then it's forcing them in a very non-painful way to realize there's probably a different opinion than what you came into the classroom with. Part of our diploma program, we study the cartoonist Lalo Alcaraz. He is a local California political cartoonist. And he has a very set view. He's born and raised in San Diego. He's the son of immigrants. He's going to have a very particular viewpoint on certain issues. We study it. And so some students are very offended. And so it's interesting to see, okay, what are your viewpoints based on this cartoon he's created? How do you think someone else might look at this? And so it really helps in a very non-forceful way for them to realize there might be a different opinion. You might have responded to this in a different way than someone else has. So I enjoy this slide. There's also one here called interpret. What do you think the author is trying to convey? Like it says, paste a passage, an image, and then just have students try to interpret it. There's also draw conclusions. What conclusions do you draw from the information? I always enjoy having my students look at technical data. I'll have them look at a graph. How do you read that? How does it fit into what we're talking about in English, especially when we're going into informational text? And so what conclusions do you draw without me having to tell them, this is what this graph is telling us? What do you draw from it? What do you notice about it? What stands out to you? Another one I like is explain. How did you come to this answer? What evidence supports your ideas? I usually use this at the very beginning, especially in my 10th grade class, when we're trying to look for textual evidence. They'll make claims. We all know 10th graders love to make statements of the world, but it's very rare they back them up. So this is really getting to that idea of, okay, Explain it to me. Why do you feel that way? How do you get this information? What knowledge? And then they always tell me, well, they say, okay, so who's the they? And we go back to really trying to find the fundamental parts of it. You'll notice that Pear Deck nicely kind of color codes for us. So the critical thinking sites typically have this green border for them. The SAL sites have a blue border. So just that way it's kind of quick for you to see it too. This is a slide I use probably once a week, usually in about Wednesday or Thursday in the middle of the week. What is filling your bucket today and what's draining it? Sometimes I'll change the today to this week. And it really helps students to see like, no, like there's some great things, because 10th graders have a tendency of being very pessimistic. My juniors, especially when it's coming time for all their college things, very pessimistic. Seniors are beyond pessimistic. So yes, we all know there's drains to your bucket. So what also is filling it? And sometimes they can't answer that. And so then I have a chance to really talk to them. I'm able to see, okay, so what's going on? What can I do to help you? Who do I need to connect you with? You need to talk to our SIS coordinator? Do you need to talk to your counselor? Do you need to talk to the College and Career Center lady? Like what is something I can do to really start reaching out to you? And it just helps. We know in the high school classroom, there's 38 students. It's hard to get to know to them. But if they fill this out, I can quickly look at the results and be like, oh, I need to make sure this person is taken care of, or make sure their peers are looking after them. Because we know that's usually something they're very keen on, is making sure their peers are helping them if they have that support system. Another SEL I like is regarding, and then you put in the topic, describe a perspective different from your own. So this one's a little more blatant, not the two heads. This is truly the next step. So I use this. Another one I really like, it's kind of the same questions we asked. You can see there's different ways to format them. What was easy? What was interesting and challenging? What was hard? And it's interesting, a lot of times the hard one is not the skills, it's the content that students struggle with. Like, this was hard because I've had this experience, but then I know what I can do to give support. Usually the interesting and challenging is where I get skills involved. What was easy is usually the context itself. So you'll notice there's tons of them here. Like I said, you can adjust all of them for you. They are available to you. It is all set up. There's draggables if you have the paid version, things like that. All right, so now we get to the subject areas. For the first part, I'm just going to focus on the ELA ones. Where you find those, just scroll down. You'll see there's example questions. And then there's the littles, the math, the science, the social studies, the world language, and ELA. We're going to focus on the ELA ones first. There is a lot. These are the three big ones that I use. I love this one, understanding the reading. So if I give informational text or if I give literary text, oftentimes I'll put the main idea. Like I said, this is set up as a Google slide. So all I have to do is take a text box. I can add it on top of the previous text box. And then I type in the main idea. Sometimes I won't type in the main idea. I'll type in the topic sentence. And then this really helps students format a paragraph in a very set way of a graphic organizer, but it really helps students to see, okay, so I'll give them a portion of it. I want you to find two other portions. I'll give them a detailed textual evidence from the text. We were studying the things they carried by Tim O'Brien in my class last year. And so I would give students 3 textual evidence and I would make them come up with, okay, what's the topic sentences? What's the main idea for these 3? How do they basically come together? Especially those of you that have taught it or read that, you know that it is basically broken up into like a novella style, very small episodes that kind of have a theme. And so I would choose random things and really force them to like, okay, so why does O'Brien put these in the text? How are we able to analyze this, think about it? So it's just really nice ways to get students that probably are not going to respond if you said, okay, give me some textual evidence. But if I provide the evidence, they can definitely fill in their topic sentence, their main idea. These are skills they've had for many years. I'm just activating in a way that is not as stressful as, all right, write me a paragraph instantly. It's that pre-work, that backup work. Another one that I really enjoy is the story map. And you can always change this. So sometimes I won't say I'll get rid of, and you literally can get rid of everything. You just have to make sure you click on it. You can change the pictures out. When we first went to pandemic, I used this as my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday slide of this is what I need you to do. This is when I'm going to meet with you. These are our tutoring sessions. So you can change everything, but it really helps. So sometimes I'll just have this as like not necessarily story map, but I'll have it as your story notes. And then say, okay, what's the setting of this text? We do a unit at the very beginning for 10th grade of dystopian short stories. And so they'll have 5 of these. All right, what's the story notes for the pedestrian? What's the story notes for Harrison Bergeron? What are the story notes for, and then various other ones. I'll take a chapter from Friday Black. I'll take a chapter from The Sellout. And so that way, okay, so what are the story notes from this? And so that way students are able to quickly come up with these ideas. It's a skill they have presented in a different way that is more accessible for many of them. Another one that I really enjoy using, let me change this back though, that way, in case you get lost. Another one is, what method of persuasion is the author using? So we do a lot of an entire unit, really. We read Antigone, Julius Caesar, we look at a bunch of ads. And so I have them. What method of persuasion? Typically I change author to like creator is using. And it's a multiple choice. Students can decide, is it ethos? Is it pathos? Is it logos? And it's multiple choice, and they have to choose one. And we know oftentimes, especially the more advanced literature, is going to use more than one of those at any one time. And so it's really helpful to start those discussions. So students choose, and then they'll notice, I'll show the results, and they'll say, but I didn't choose that. Like, how do they see this? And so then we are actually able to have a discussion on why did you choose this? So it's really nice as a builder. It's a multiple choice. Students are willing to answer multiple choice. And then you're able to really build on that for the conversation portion. So these are the English ones. You'll notice there's 3 of them. As I said, there's Venn diagrams available. There are like DOLs, correct the sentence. There's drag the dots for identification of like your subject matter, your speeches, your speech positions. You can illustrate the setting, another one for perspective. Those are the ones for English. But now it's time to be creative, right? So there's various other parts of Pear Deck, and I can play with them. So I'm going to show you some examples. For instance, this one here is, you can tell probably from social studies, right? It's a typical map, geography based. But in the English classroom, I may not need them to know the map. So you'll notice this is a picture of the world. These are the locations. What I'm able to do is I can take a paragraph. This was an intro paragraph. And I can have students locate what is the thesis, what is the hook, what is the argument. So all I have to do is put in a text box or a picture. This was actually a picture taken from, I think it was OWL. Each sentence is highlighted. So that way students can see what the sentences are. Some of my students have issues with that. We're able to really discuss what goes into a paragraph, what sentences are required. And then the students have their pictures, their elements. So the student can say, okay, here's the flag. Where is your thesis? And they can put it at the beginning. You can give them more explicit directions. Okay, where's the hook to this? And then where's the argument being funded? Like, where do we see this argument occur? So you'll notice this started as a map. You're able to turn it into anything. So I turned it into basically an identification using relatively advanced skills for them, but in a easily presentable way. As an educator, this is an easy way for me to see, do they know what a thesis is? Right? So oftentimes we talk about it, but can they actually identify it? And if they can identify it, can they identify it in their work? This is another one. It's an evaluation one taken from social studies. You can put an excerpt or a link to an article, assign pages from something, and then can you identify any biases that the author has? We know we want students to be able to read informational text, understand informational text, so this is a great way for them to do that. This is a similar one. Insert an excerpt. Is it fact or is it opinion? Where does it fall on the line? So students are able to see different things. I use this one fairly often. You can tell this is from World Languages, and it's illustrate this sentence. Well, that may not be necessarily, depending on the level of your student, something that I need them to do. But I know in my classroom, we read advanced text. Students struggle with the visual imagery. Some of our students don't have that in their head where they can have that mental picture. So I'm trying to get them to build those skills. So I will take a sentence like this. Together, they sat at the shoreline. The shimmering sun was sinking into the sea. And as it disappeared, she told him they'd never meet again. And so literally, I have a sentence there and I'll tell them, all right, illustrate it for me. And it's interesting to see students change it from what's in their head to what's on the page. And this is going to be a very crude drawing because they're using a trackpad usually or a mouse. But it really helps them to see what stands out to you in these two sentences. What do you notice? What stories being told? And students enjoy looking at each other's work. Another one that I like is this one here. This is how it comes from Pear Deck, is ask a question about an image in a language. But in my classroom, like I said, we do lots of investigation into political cartoons. And so I'll have ask a question about this image and I'll put one of our political cartoons. This was after Kobe had recently died. And so I'll put this up. Okay, just ask me a question about it. Because I want my students, we're large on QFT in our district using those question formulation techniques. And so this helps students on a small scale continue to practice those. So ask a question about the image. This one here is taken from a maths class, but I turn it into a what do you see, what do you wonder? To really get students to be able to read visual imagery, visual text. And it's Pear Deck, so they can ask as many questions as they want. And we can get a list of questions from all of the students. So what do you see? What do you wonder? The images I usually take from the New York Times, what's happening in that photo, where they're uncaptioned images and students, it's a whole contest they do, but you can look back over like 40 different images and you can pick and choose and things from that. This is another one we study in part of my class. This is taken from science, describe what's happening. And so I'll do this one. We study Dorothea Lange and we try to go away from migrant mother, or I'll use this one, which you can tell is migrant mother, but in the series. And so I'll have them describe what's happening. What story is she trying to tell? So that's one of our big artists. We used Dorothea Lange alongside of Their Eyes Are Watching God. Both women, both at the same time period, two very different perspectives in life and experiences in life. And so we use this so that students can see the stories being told, what is being featured. Another aspect that I like to use, and that is fairly popular among English teachers, so you probably are already familiar with this, is the idea of a thesis throwdown. It's a fun way of students just manufacturing theses. So I'll have a prompt. This was taken from when we did Their Things Are Watching God. How does Janie define love? And so students just have to come up with a thesis. And so I'll set the timer. You have 8 minutes. By the end, if all participate, which hopefully they will, we'll have 38 different theses. And then I can project them and we can go through them. We can make changes like, oh, this one's really good. Do you have this in yours? Like, did you include the author? Did you include the text? Did you include like a response to the prompt? Did you go way too much and give me in a paragraph, which some of them do? So then we can start chopping, cutting, but I can see everyone. So it's instant formative feedback. Up on the board, I'm able to see everyone's responses. So it really helps. I know other teachers, they'll use Thesis Throwdown with all the whiteboards in the class and every group writes it and then they can start comparing. I don't have room like that. I have a very small classroom with 38 students. Moving around is not something we tried to, even before the pandemic, we tried to keep everyone relatively in a place. So this worked. I could see everyone's responses. You can do it as a group. So just have certain students respond. You can do it as everybody responds. So I can end up with 38 different theses. And it's fantastic because I quickly can see it, but I also can download the results and I'll take out the names and send them to the students like, look, We manufactured 38 of these. Choose the one that you think fits your essay the best. Or take one, start using it, start tweaking it. And so that way students really see that it's not all about just what they can create, but really what our community can create and how we can improve on it. There's the Edu protocols. Many people are familiar with this. The one I really like to use is Sketch and Tell. So this was taken from Fahrenheit. I would just, we do the reading the next day in class. I'll say, okay, sketch a scene from part 1. Typically we get the woman who immolates herself, but oftentimes we'll get the snake, we'll get different things, what stood out to them from Fahrenheit, usually within the first 3 pages, because my students have a tendency of not reading. So sketch a scene. What is something that you've noticed from part 1? So sketch, you give them 5 minutes. They use the rudimentary features of Pear Deck to draw a picture. And then I give them 8 minutes. Describe what you sketch. And so students actually write a response. I drew this. This is what stood out to me. Some of them will throw in their textual evidence as we get later in the semester. Usually for Fahrenheit, they do not. Once in a while, I'll get a student who does. But it really helps. These are students that typically, if I ask the question, what did you like about last night's reading? It's going to be quiet. But if I say, okay, draw something from last night's reading, I will get a response. Tell me about last night's reading, I will get a response. And once I get the responses, they're up on the board, projected, anybody can respond, because then we have a collective base of knowledge. So suddenly students that maybe weren't so confident in their comprehension and their reading are now able to actually respond. This is one that I used often in my 11th and 12th grade classes. We were reading essays by Barry Lopez. He's an author who just recently died, but from Oregon. And he really talked about anthropology and environmentalism. And so towards the end, I would have students review their annotations. And then I want them to record their thoughts, reflections on each essay. I could do this within Pear Deck, but the nice thing is in Pear Deck, you also have, sorry, I'm gonna have to adjust real quick. I have my Pear Deck. I have a Padlet actually dropped in. And so it's fantastic that I can include this. So I can, especially if you have the paid one, so I don't spend a lot of time, because I know not everyone has that ability, but if you do have the paid version, you have the website button. You can drop in a Google Doc, another Google slide to have students work on together. Because Pear Deck is very individual. It's not a group collaboration. I know some people, that's why they enjoy Nearpod or something different. Pear Deck is very much the individual response. So with this, oftentimes I'll drop in a Google Doc that I then can have students work on together. Or I'll drop in a Padlet, or you could drop in a Wakelet and have students work on together. You could drop in a YouTube video. Anything that has the HTTPS, you can drop in. Sometimes you have to do the embed code and then just take portions of it. It's a little sketchy sometimes, but for the most part, everything will drop in. So for this, Padlet is super easy. I'm just able to open it up, and then students can start adding in things. So we can have our lesson. When we were on pandemic parts of our distance learning, this was something I used often because students really struggle. They could get on Pear Deck, but if I made them go to many different sites, have lots of different logins, they started to struggle. I would start to lose them. So by having the website I want to use embedded into Pear Deck, it didn't cause the student, all they had to do was go to the next slide. The website would pop up, it's right there for them. So it really saved a lot of time, a lot of frustration. And it was available to them. They had it right there. Sometimes putting in the video caused some problems because then they'd start watching the video. And with Pear Deck, if it's on teacher pace, I'll move to the next slide and the kid's like, no, I was watching that video. So you have to know where your students are at. When we're in the classroom together, it'll be much easier. But that was a part that was something that was a challenge. I teach some of the units from ERWC by the CSU program. And they really like the idea of what is a golden line. And so I use this often. If I don't do a sketch and tell, I use this. And so students can find a line, a passage that rocked their world if they did the reading. If not, they can skim quickly and find a line that stood out to them. So I'll have students just give me, what is a golden line from the assigned reading? We're recently adopted Study Sync. And so students will do their reading there. So it's easy for them to copy and paste a line from their reading, drop it right into this. And then I just have a collection of lines that stood out to everyone. And so then we can have a class discussion. So then really the students are manufacturing what we talk about. Because something that stood out to me may not interest them at all. It may not be something that stuck to them. Whereas sometimes they'll choose lines that I'm like, why did that really stand out to you? And then we have a great class discussion. So it really does help those reticent students that would never raise their hand and say, well, I enjoyed this line. They don't mind copying and pasting it and telling me why they enjoyed that line. So then I'm listening to them. As the semester, the year progresses, hopefully I'll also be hearing them. But especially when we were on online learning, they would not, because the community we're in, I would rarely get faces. I would rarely get voices, but I would get Pear Deck responses. And so it really helps stimulate those discussions. Just so you can see how it actually looks, I'm going to turn this into a Pear Deck. So you'll notice all of these slides have parts. And all you have to do to make it Pear Deck is you click here where it says Start Lesson. You have a choice now for the last year or so, since everyone was online. You can choose instructor-paced activity, or you can choose student-paced activity. If you choose instructor-paced activity, you decide when we switch slides. If you choose student-paced, the students can go through all the slides. Depends on what the lesson is, what you're planning on doing. I typically start instruction-paced. Yeah. You can load. I got it. So you'll see this. It always comes up with a 6-letter code. You can invite people through Google Classroom. You can also give students a link. I typically would give students a link. Once you get the link copied, you can just go to the chat. And with the chat, you're able to drop it in. And then as teachers, but as students, all they have to do is click on it and it'll go. As if people click on it, you'll start seeing who's connected. So that way, you know, typically I would have 35 students attend my virtual class. I would wait usually about until half, because we know students are slow. So I would just talk, intro the lesson. We would get things started. I might, right now it's stuck on like that last slide we were looking at, but you can always have it on one of those intro slides. Whatever slide it's on is what they have access to. So as you guys can see, you have access to the golden line. Once I get it started, I can change that to going to maybe I want them to do the poll. So I'll have the poll slide as the one that's up, or I'll have this is usually when I have the bucket slide pulled up. So here, you're able to see that I can then have the bucket slide pulled up. I can go back so students can actually type it in, and they can do it joinpd.com or just do the link if they have it. So all of you, if you're logged in, you can now see what it looks like. What is filling your bucket? This is a drawing slide, so you can actually write with the horrible touchpad, or you can type. So you have access to this. When you are the teacher, this is what you do. You do the show responses. And you'll see that you can see every student who has responded. You can see all of them here. If you're the educator, you see who it is. Students will never see who it is. They're always anonymous to students. as an educator, I always see who is responding. So that's very helpful. If I have students that maybe are not as appropriate as they should be, I also have the ability to click and I can hide that response. So drawing slides have a tendency sometimes of getting anatomical parts. And so I can hide those slides, right? I get to see them before I show them. If it's one of those slides that students do the draggable, I would highly, let me find a draggable slide. Here's the draggable ones. I would highly recommend locking the screen once you do it. If you do the little triangle on the side, you're able to instantly give a timer. So 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes. And it counts down. Students can see the countdown. They can move their flags anywhere they want. Once the countdown is done, the screen is locked. And that way the flags don't move around as you're talking. It's kind of locked in space. And then you can unlock them and they can move around. I've just found that the drawing slides, the draggable slides, until your students know the classroom management techniques that you prefer, what's best for the community, you might want to lock the screen so you don't have craziness occur. We do know students have a tendency. If you're doing your lesson and you realize, oh, I forgot something, you can always do new prompts. And then you'll notice you can choose one of the prompts that are available to you during the middle of the class. You can just choose one and drop it in. So you can drop in a Venn diagram and have students work on it. So if you notice you get a response from one of these of, oh, I'm lost. All right, let's drop in a slide. We can do some quick recovery. I can actively work on this quickly. You'll see there's KWL charts. There's all sorts of things you can just drop in. So that way it's available to you, and then you just close the window and continue on with your presentation. As I said, the 3 dots, when you're done, you can instantly turn on student paste, which is what I'm going to do. So all of you have access to it. And then you can make full screen, you can name it. If you do this, you love Pear Deck, you can go to the home. I know I'm running out of time. You can go to the home, which is peardeck.com. You click sessions, and then you have every single Pear Deck you've ever done for the last 30 days. If you want older ones, you can click archived and they're all there. Only suggestion is if you teach more than one period, make sure you label them. Otherwise, it becomes an adventure. And you can reopen things, you can copy things. There's all sorts of fun stuff you can do with Pear Deck. Our time is up. I know there was some chat. I will be happy to stay if you need me to answer any. And I know it was very much a talking head, but I wanted to show you all the features. Like I said, I have my Twitter account. I have my email. Please reach out to me if there's anything that I didn't explain enough, something that you need more information for. I am here to make sure that you understand it. Like I said, I'm now part of that learning coach, so I definitely will have time to answer your emails. Yes, for my district, but for everybody. So that's everything I have. If you have questions, if you have other questions, other thoughts, other ways, please let me know. If not, enjoy the rest of your learning.